Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. You know the drill. We're ranking all the Pillars of Eternity classes. If you need a refresher on basic mechanics, there's a link in the description to my 2023 Pillars of Eternity Beginner's Guide. Let's jump into the sixth class of this series, Monk. More than any other class, monks use unarmed attacks to devastating effect. This class has two core mechanics. Transcendent Suffering increases the damage monks are capable of when they have no equipped weapons. I cannot find a table that lays out how this increase works, but essentially their unarmed damage is in line with what you would expect using other types of weapons. Every time a monk takes 10 or more damage, they get a wound. Wounds are used to power some of their special abilities. Monks get a +1 bonus to Stealth, Athletics, and Survival. Stealth can help you make the most of powerful combat abilities. Second Wind from Athletics is very useful for frontline fighters, and the Accuracy bonus from Survival is useful regardless of your class. Monks get average endurance, very high health, very high accuracy, and high deflection. Obviously, this is a class built for taking a ton of punishment. Starting at level 1, you have two monk abilities to choose from. Swift Strikes can be cast instantly and increases your attack speed by 25% for 10 seconds. The faster you hit, the more damage you can do, so this is absolutely a must-have. Torment's Reach hits one target with considerable crush damage, and then all enemies within 2 meters in a 135-degree cone are also hit with crush damage, while their might is reduced by 2. This is another great power to have, and in the beginning of the game, you will likely need to wear heavier armor to survive, so there's a case to be made that Torment's Reach should be selected first, because Swift Strikes won't be as helpful until you can safely wear lighter or no armor. At level 2, you unlock two talents. Lesser Wounds lessens the amount of damage necessary to create a wound from 10 to 8. The challenge with playing a monk is not taking damage, it's keeping your character alive while they are taking the damage. I don't think this is worth it. Mortification of the Soul can be used 3 times per rest and deals raw damage that generates 1 wound. Again, generating wounds is not the real issue, so skip this. At level 3, you unlock 3 more talents. Turning Wheel gives you an additional 5% burn damage for every wound your monk has. You can pump this up to around 50%, adding a significant amount of damage, so I recommend picking it up, except for one caveat we'll talk about later. Long Stride is a passive that adds 2 to your movement speed. Personally, I don't think that's worth an ability point, so I would skip this. Finally, Force of Anguish does a moderate amount of crush damage along with pushing a target back 7 meters. While being pushed back, the enemy will push other characters out of the way and bounce off of hard surfaces before falling prone. Prone reduces dexterity by 2, reflex and deflection by 10, and the enemy cannot take any actions. The prone effect lasts for 10 seconds, so this is a considerable debuff, but keep in mind you have to spend wounds in order to use this ability. That means it doesn't make sense to take something like this and Turning Wheel in the same build. So now you need to make a decision about what kind of monk you are running. Do you want to focus on spending wounds to use powerful abilities, or hold the wounds to increase your damage? Both strategies have merit, so it comes down to personal preference. At level 2, if you have already selected Swift Strikes, you will unlock Lightning Strikes, which modifies the talent to deal 25% damage as shock damage. This is a great pickup if you use Swift Strikes regularly. I have to show this at level 4 since that's the earliest your monk party member Zawa can select it. At level 5, you unlock 3 more abilities. Stunning Blow is available twice per encounter and does a moderate amount of crush damage while stunning an opponent for 3 seconds. This is a great way to debuff enemies without spending wounds. Depending on your setup, this could be a great pick. Clarity of Agony is available twice per rest and reduces the duration of hostile effects by 50% for 10 seconds. This can be a great way to shore up your monk defensively, especially if your team doesn't have a priest. Finally, Soul Mirror reflects 50% of missed ranged attacks back towards the attacker. This is mediocre because archers will oftentimes choose squishy targets, and your monk should definitely not be on that list. Also, even with great defenses, misses are relatively rare, so this won't be triggered that often. At level 7, you unlock 4 more monk abilities. Crucible of Suffering is a passive that gives you a plus 10 bonus to Fortitude, Reflex, and Will defenses for 20 seconds anytime a hostile effect expires. A temporary bonus of 10 isn't earth-shattering, but this will trigger often, especially if you have Clarity of Agony, so it's worth considering. Duality of Mortal Presence is a modal ability that either provides a plus 8 bonus to Deflection or a plus 8 bonus to all other defenses. Monks already get high deflection, but the latter bonus is very nice, so I recommend picking this up. Rooting Pain is a passive ability that triggers every time you gain a wound, creating a shockwave that deals crushing damage and potentially interrupts enemies. If you are constantly spending wounds, then you'll also constantly gain them, and this is a worthy investment. If you are instead focused on stockpiling wounds, then this won't trigger nearly as often, and I would skip it. The Long Pain allows you to summon your fist as ranged weapons for 30 seconds. Fighting at range makes it much more difficult to generate wounds, so I would skip this option. At level 9, you unlock Enervating Blows, which is a passive that weakens enemies every time you do a melee critical hit against them. Weakened enemies have their Might and Constitution reduced by 2, Movement reduced by 1, and Fortitude and Will defenses are reduced by 20. Even with a high Perception rank, your fist won't crit all that often, and I recommend you skip this. Quick note before we review the last 3 levels. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate you hitting the like button. This information lets me know which videos the community is enjoying. If you want to support this kind of content, please consider becoming a member of the channel, where you will get access to full playthrough episodes. At level 11, you unlock 2 more abilities. Flagellant's Path rushes you towards a target, dealing fantastic crush damage to that foe and reducing the defenses of all enemies in your path by 10 for 8 seconds. That damage and debuff is cool, but this ability really shines as a way to get your monk in the exact spot you want them to be. Iron Wheel increases your damage reduction by 1 for each wound you accumulate. An additional 10 damage reduction is not a game changer by any stretch, but if you prefer not to spend your wounds, this isn't a bad pickup. At level 13, you unlock another 2 abilities. The Dichotomous Soul summons 2 different versions of your character. This is a big deal, as both summons can deal solid damage and take a punch. 8 wounds might seem like a large amount, but if your monk is built to spend wounds constantly, more than likely you have found a balance that allows you to consistently generate wounds while keeping your monk alive. If that's the case, then this skill is a must-have. Skyward Kick is available twice per encounter and deals a moderate amount of crush damage while also knocking an enemy prone for 3 seconds. The damage is unimpressive, and 3 seconds is way too short, so I would skip this. Finally, at level 15, you unlock Resonant Touch, which is available once per encounter. Once activated, this ability creates a passive that makes your melee strikes mark an enemy if you deal more than 10 damage. At a time of your choosing, you can activate Resonant Touch again, which will cause all enemies within a 3-minute radius to take 10 raw damage for each mark they have. This maxes out at 100 damage, and remember, raw damage completely bypasses an enemy's defenses. In my opinion, this is way too much work for the amount of damage it does, and I would skip this. Overall, I rank this class a D, and spoiler alert, Monk is the class I like the least in the entire game. You are forced to make yourself vulnerable to damage, but you don't get any mechanics that truly reward that playstyle. Unlike Barbarian, which can feel absolutely godlike when playing with low health, Monk never feels like it's worth the trouble you go through babysitting the class. While the base damage for unarmed attacks scales well, there is no way to enchant or upgrade your fist. Consequently, mechanics like Durgan's Steel Speed enchantments or the different late game effects you can place on standard weapons are completely unavailable to you. There are a couple of monk specific items, but they both just give a bonus to the damage your fists do. From a role-playing standpoint, Monk has the second least unique dialogue in the game. Technically, there's nothing in the class background that conflicts with what you do as a watcher, but the game gives you virtually nothing to help flesh that out. Your monk party member Zawa has a great personal quest, but again, Monk sucks, so you can safely keep him on the bench. That completes my ranking of the monk class. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. Take care.